Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's episode, we're going to take a look back at the weekend's racing in Sin City, including a couple of driver interviews during media availabilities, where Denny Hamlin talked about race manipulation and made an interesting point as to why it's such a big deal in NASCAR these days. Plus, Kyle Larson talked about the increase in horsepower this past weekend, including an interview on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and it included a warning to fans. And of course, we'll talk about that wild race that ended in entertaining fashion, with Denny Hamlin earning an emotional 60th win. We'll have the race winner's tear-filled post-race comments, and not the ones you saw on TV. He was emotional there, but even more so in his radio interview. However, before we get to that, let's go back to an interview I heard on Friday with Kyle Larson on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. Of course, he was asked about the changes to the increase of horsepower coming in 2026. And here's what the 2021 champion had to say.
I think it just makes it, just adds to the element of, managing your tires, I think. But, I'm definitely happy that we've gone in this direction. I would also, though, encourage fans to temper their expectations of it, because although it's an increase, it's not a massive increase, and I don't think it's one that we're really going to feel much of a difference behind the wheel. But I do, like I said, I do believe it's a step in the right direction. I just don't, it's not going to look massively different. So, it's a good start, and we'll see, as we get a whole field of cars out there. But, I don't think it's going to look drastically different, as I would assume that, we're probably going to try and promote,
I get him suggesting fans should temper expectations, but he also said it's a step in the right direction. That's something NASCAR officials said they wanted, was drivers to buy in. It sounds like Larson is doing that, but also suggesting, like Steve Letarte said in my Friday's episode, don't stop there. Goodyear has made massive strides this year with the tire, and an increase in horsepower should further improve the racing on tracks where the Gen 7 car has struggled, particularly road courses and short tracks. So that was Kyle Larson on Friday on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. On Saturday, the number 5 driver met with reporters at Las Vegas and basically confirmed what he had already said. The Athletic's Jeff Gluck shared what Larson had to say on X. Quote, "I hope you media guys don't promote the shit out of it like it's going to fix everything, because it's not way different." End quote. Gluck also noted that Larson said it is in a better direction. So I've seen some of the comments on the channel, and the general feeling is yes, it's an increase in horsepower, but fans shouldn't expect it to make a huge difference. Maybe a little, but according to Larson, not as much as we had hoped. Moving on to our next topic, and another interview from the weekend in Vegas, and that was with Denny Hamlin. He was discussing last weekend's race at the Charlotte Roval and the quietness that fell over his team radio in the final laps, and kind of what is expected from the drivers and the teams when it comes to communication over the radio and potential race manipulation.
Maybe, but all situations are different. If you watch a college football game today, there's going to be a game, there's going to be a spread, and somebody will be leading with 3 seconds on the clock, and they're going to run backwards into the end zone and get a safety, and it could change what money's changed hands. So, they chose what's the best strategy for them. They didn't care about your bets or whatever it might be, right? I think some of the sensitivity around this is obviously probably gambling focused, because I know that NASCAR is very, very sensitive, as they should be, with that, to make sure everyone's getting a fair shake. But on the racetrack, I feel as though as long as you don't have a bias to one party or another, I don't know why you can't make the best decision for yourself. But, because the points are about to reset. You know what I mean? That was a cutoff race for me personally. Whether I finished 17th or 18th meant zero, nothing. At that point, then I actually gained the advantage by being able to choose, if I so choose, if I wanted to. But I don't know whether I still don't know whether that's acceptable or not. It was a very weird situation. It was a very unique one. It may or may not come up again at some point. But I'm more wondering what is going to be allowed. Are people going to be allowed to intentionally wreck? I said on my podcast that what I did to Chastain at Phoenix, I don't know how it's any different whatsoever. I'm not saying there should be a penalty for Ross or anything, but it's an intentional wreck is an intentional wreck. What's the difference? So I certainly would like that clarification sooner than later, so we all know what to expect.
There were two things from Hamlin's remarks that I thought were interesting. One of them was on race manipulation and how NASCAR is sensitive to it due to the gambling component that's now a part of NASCAR, so that makes total sense. The other thing he mentioned was how Ross Chastain intentionally wrecked him, and the number one wasn't penalized. I think that's a totally fair question, especially considering how he was ultimately penalized for Chastain's move and lost multiple spots in the race. All right, now let's move on to Saturday's practice. And I noticed that the Penske cars were struggling, with Ryan Blaney putting down the 17th fastest time while Joey Logano finished 28th. However, in qualifying, the three-time champion put down a solid run and qualified 9th, while Blaney qualified 14th. The other notable thing about qualifying was it was all the big dogs from Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing up front, with Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe on the front row, followed by Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott in row 2. HMS teammates William Byron and Kyle Larson lined up in the third row. When the green flag dropped, Chase Briscoe surged out in front and took the lead. Just 15 laps into that first stage, and the biggest mover was Noah Gragson, who had gained an impressive 9 spots, while Shane Van Gisbergen was the biggest loser at that point, losing 4 positions. On lap 32, we started our first round of green flag pit stops. We all know pit road is important in every race, but at certain tracks it's even more important. At Vegas, it was critical because A, it can be a tricky and slippery pit road, and B, mistakes on pit road are magnified the further you get into the playoffs. Chase Briscoe's team was the first one to stumble. After surrendering the race lead on lap 35, he headed down pit road, and the number 19 crew had a long stop due to issues on the left rear of the car. Once the green flag pit cycle was complete, William Byron, who had been the fastest car in practice, came out in front. On lap 50, all playoff drivers were running inside the top 12, 6 of them inside the top 7, and only the Penske cars outside of the top 8, with Logano in 10th and Blaney in 12th. Unfortunately for Blaney, his position didn't improve after that, because just over 20 laps later, and the number 12 blew a left front tire, which resulted in a hard hit into the outside wall. Blaney was done for the day and finished last. That incident obviously had huge playoff implications, basically putting Blaney in a must-win situation in the upcoming 2 races at Talladega and Martinsville, both places where he's won in the recent past. Incredibly, that was Blaney's 8th DNF of the season. Yeah, 8. There were just a couple laps left in the stage following Blaney's crash, and when the stage ended, William Byron won it. He was followed by Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott. Notice how it's all JGR and HMS? Rounding out the top 10 were Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs, and a lone Ford inside the top 10 was Joey Logano in 10th. Things got off to a really sketchy start for William Byron in the second stage, when he got a push from Chase Briscoe that sent the number 24 car down the left side of the track. On lap 100 of the race, the top 5 was once again all JGR HMS teams, with Logano in 9th, and look who was in 10th. Shane Van Gisbergen. In that second stage, we had more green flag pit stops, with Christopher Bell being the first to start the cycle. And once again, just like that first stage, we had a playoff driver making a mistake on pit road. This time, it was the number 9 car of Chase Elliott, who had an uncontrolled tire. With that mistake, Elliott went 1 lap down. Naturally, for the rest of the second stage, that was one of the storylines. Could Chase Elliott get back on the lead lap while his teammate Kyle Larson continued to lap more cars? Eventually, Elliott did just that. Kyle Larson eventually won the stage, his 10th stage win of the year. He was followed by Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Briscoe. So we headed into stage 3, and we had only had the 1 caution for cause with Blaney's incident late in that first stage. You guys know where I'm going with this. We've talked about it on this channel multiple times this year. Cautions, precautions. And they've typically come in that third and final stage after what is tended to be quiet first and second stages. After we passed the 200 lap mark, green flag pit stops started with just over 50 to go. And there was a dicey situation on those stops when Alex Bowman came in hot and got into the rear of Ty Gibbs getting onto pit road. Once that pit cycle was complete, William Byron had cycled to the front and taken the lead. But it was a short time later that his teammate Kyle Larson pounced when the number 24 driver made a mistake, got loose, and slid up the track, which allowed Larson to go by on the low side and take the lead. It was a short time later when we had one of the scarier crashes of the year, with Byron following Larson through lap traffic, and then Ty Dillon happened. The number 10 driver was about to make a stop on pit road, but was up a lane on the track, and he didn't indicate he was making the move. Unfortunately, William Byron, who was going at full speed, had no idea Dillon was going to pit road and violently slammed into the rear of the number 10 car and briefly got some air. The end result was 2 destroyed race cars and Byron's playoff situation now similar to Blaney, in that he must win going into the final 2 races in the round of 8. On the subsequent pit stops, tire strategy came into play, with Chase Briscoe, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Shane Van Gisbergen all going with 2 tires, while the rest of the cars up front went with 4. And then on the restart, we had a big crash. In fact, it was the biggest single accident in Las Vegas history, with 11 cars involved, and it included playoff drivers Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell, as well as Ross Chastain, Carson Hocevar, and SVG. On the restart with 14 laps to go, Chase Briscoe lined up on the inside of row 1 with Joey Logano on the outside. The number 19 got a really strong start and pulled out to the lead. Denny Hamlin restarted in the 3rd row on the outside. Over the course of the next 13 laps, it was a question of who could challenge Briscoe. Kyle Larson passed Logano and moved in behind the number 19 with 11 to go. Denny Hamlin followed right behind him and got a 2-for-1 special, passing both Tyler Reddick and Alex Bowman. And then, with 5 laps to go, Hamlin passed Kyle Larson and 1 lap later passed his teammate and race leader Chase Briscoe for the lead and never looked back. Hamlin won for a 6th time in 2025, which are his most wins in a season since 2020, and more significantly, earned career win number 60, which put him in a tie with Kevin Harvick for 10th all-time in wins. The victory advanced him to the Championship 4 race in Phoenix for his first appearance since 2021. Hamlin was obviously very emotional after the race. Watch this.
It's the point where I kind of give the fans some shit, but not today. I appreciate all of you so much.
It's okay.
Yeah, just obviously want to say hi to my dad.
That was on USA Network. Now I want you to listen to Hamlin's post-race interview on the radio.
I can see how emotional. What makes it so emotional, Denny?
Yeah, it's just Dad's not doing well, and I'm glad he gets to see it. That's all.
All right.
Denny's going to take a sip of water. We're going to let him. I know it's a very emotional day. Denny, enjoy this victory with your team.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was hard to listen to. You could feel his pain. I admit it, I got tears in my eyes listening to that interview. I've lost both of my parents. I talked about my mom's death on this channel less than 2 years ago. That hurt is real, and it can only be understood if you've lost a parent. So I feel for the Hamlin family and hope they can find peace during this very turbulent time. And I wanted to wrap up today's show with a quote from Kyle Busch, who finished 8th to record his 9th top 10 of the year, but his first one in the last 7 races.
Good day for our Zone Chevrolet guys. Appreciate all the hard work and everything that went into that from yesterday to today. Lots and lots and lots and lots of changes and some improvements made, but yeah, we still got some work to do, so we'll just keep working on it, keep fighting through it, and trying to improve the race cars that come from the race shop.
Do you feel like you're gaining on it?
We got a good finish out of today. You got to have consistently good finishes to assess that.
Appreciate your time, Kyle.
Thanks.
He wasn't as upbeat as I expected for a top 10 result on his home track, but explained how this is just one race and how the number 18 needs to have multiple results similar to this before he can truly assess if they're improving. You can just sense that Rowdy is ready for the long season to come to an end, and it's hard to blame him. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the comments of Kyle Larson on horsepower. Do you agree or disagree that it won't make much of a difference increasing it to 750? What about the remarks of Denny Hamlin on race manipulation and how gambling plays a factor in NASCAR keeping close tabs on team communications? And what did you think about the race? Las Vegas always puts on a good show, and I felt this weekend was no different. And finally, I have to ask, what did you think of Hamlin's emotional response after the race? I imagine those of you who have lost a parent understand what Denny's going through. I know I sure do. And one final note, Just a reminder that these awesome Cup Series calendars are now available for purchase in my store. I was pleasantly surprised by the number of calendars ordered last week, so thank you guys for that. Go check out the link in the description and order yours today. Speaking of thanks, I want to thank all of you for checking out the latest episode and supporting the channel. I really and truly appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.